كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه أما بعد. In the previous lesson, we covered many miscellaneous rulings pertaining to marriage, and we ended the lesson off by discussing that um, a slave woman who is married off by her master, later she is set free, she has an automatic right to annul the marriage. And in today's lesson, we're going to be continuing with that, and we'll say that the mukataba, who is a slave woman who has contracted with her master to purchase her own freedom, she has the same ruling where afterwards, if she is married off by her master, we will learn that she has the same right as soon as she is set free to annul her marriage. And then we will learn that this is not the case when it comes to a slave girl who has married without her master's permission. She will not have the same right. We will also learn about a man who marries two women in a single contract. We will learn that that is valid, and if one of them happens to be unlawful for him, then that marriage, with just only that marriage, will be void, but the other one will be valid even though they were contracted in the same marriage. We will also learn about blemishes in one of the spouses. So if one of the spouses has a blemish and the other didn't know about it, for example, insanity or leprosy, then afterwards they will not have the automatic right to annul the marriage. This is the same for the wife having the blemish. The husband doesn't have that choice, and the husband having a blemish and the wife doesn't have that choice, as we will learn today. We will also discuss rulings about an impotent husband. What right does the wife have? Similarly, the castrated husband, and also a husband who hasn't got genitals. We will learn what right the wife has. And then we will move on to the discussion of one of the spouses accepting Islam and the other one also accepts Islam, then the marriage will remain valid. But if the other one refuses to accept Islam, then what will happen in that case? What kind of divorce will occur or separation will occur, and how much dowry will be due? That will vary depending on the circumstance. And that is what we will discuss, inshallah, in today's lesson. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ability to understand all that we learn. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. As we said earlier, the first ruling of today is a continuation of what we learned previously. Imam Quduri says, and likewise is the case of a mukataba, meaning likewise is the case of the slave woman who has contracted to purchase her freedom. So this is a discussion of a mukatab slave. A mukatab would be a male slave, a mukataba, a female slave, who has essentially made a contract with their master to purchase their freedom, saying that if I give you a certain amount of money, then I want to purchase my freedom. So the master agrees to this and says, yes, whenever you have free time, earn some money, get some savings until you can purchase your freedom. Maybe if you do something really well, I'm going to give you a bonus. If you do my service extremely well, I can give you something extra. So now this mukatab, this slave who has this contract, is now going to work until he is able to accumulate, let's say, £5,000 and use that £5,000 to purchase his freedom. Once he purchases his freedom, like the other type of slave, like the normal slave, as soon as he purchases his freedom, he's now free. Now he has the option, yes. So it's regarding the female mukataba. It's the female slave who has a contract. The discussion at hand is about the female slave who has a contract with her master. As soon as she purchases her freedom, let's give an example. Khadija is a slave who has a contract with her master that if I pay you £5,000, you will free me. Her master has married her off to Hamza. Now Khadija, her contract is still binding, which means that as soon as she pays that £5,000 off, she will now be free. Now she has gotten married married off by the master. The master married her off to Hamza, which means that as soon as Khadija pays off the £5,000, she has gotten her freedom. Now she also, like the normal slave, she also has the right to remain in the marriage, and if she wants, she can annul the marriage. So again, this is in relation to that slave woman who her master marries her off. Another point to note is that similar ruling applies when a slave woman gets married with the permission of her master. So the two rulings are same. One is where the master marries her off, and another is she gets married to somebody with the permission of her master. The ruling will remain the same, which means that as soon as she purchases her freedom, now she is free. The person who she is married to, she has the right to remain in that marriage, and she also has the right to annul the marriage. Now, in the next text, Imam Quduri presents something as a contrast to this. He says, if a slave woman gets married without the permission of her master, and then she is set free, the marriage contract is valid, and she has no option. So here, as you can see, the slave woman has gotten married without the permission of her master. When she is free, she doesn't have the same rights. She doesn't have the same options as we've seen above. Her marriage contract is valid, she will not have the option. The marriage contract is binding, and she will not have the option of leaving the husband. She will need to remain in the marriage. Moving on now. Whoever marries two women in a single contract of marriage, such that one of the two women is not lawful for him to marry. Why would a woman not be lawful for him to marry? We've mentioned a few examples previously. For example, he can't marry a woman because she may be a sister of his, or she just may be a non-Muslim, an atheist, or she may already be married to a man. So he can't marry her. So he's saying, such that one of the two women is not lawful for him to marry, then the marriage with the one whose marriage is lawful for him is valid, and the marriage with the other woman is void. So here is a case where a man gets married to two women in a single session, and that is valid. Let's say Hamza is getting married to Khadija and Zainab. He is asked by someone, do you agree to marry Khadija and Zainab? He says, yes, I agree to marry Khadija and Zainab. So he's gotten married to two women at the same time. Now, in the case in question, one of the two women is not lawful for him. For example, he later finds out that Zainab, despite having a Muslim name, she's a Hindu. So Imam Quduri is saying here that his marriage is valid with Khadija, and when it comes to Zainab's marriage, that is void, that is batil. What he's trying to say here is that just because one of the two women's marriage with him becomes void, it doesn't really mean that the other marriage is also void. Rather, one of the two, the one that is correct will remain valid, and the other one will be void. So one of the two marriages will not annul the other marriage, despite despite the marriage having taken place at the same time. The contract will not completely be void. Now moving on to the next one. When the wife has a blemish, her husband has no option. When the husband is afflicted with insanity, leprosy, or vitiligo, then the wife has no option to discontinue the marriage, according to Imams Abu Hanifa and Abu Yusuf, rahimahumullah. But Imam Muhammad said that she does have the option. Essentially, before getting married, the husband and wife would ideally investigate about one another and see if the other has any blemish which may be off-putting. If the husband feels that a certain type of blemish might put him off the marriage, then he should ask her and she should declare all the blemishes that are within her. And likewise, if the wife feels that she will be put off by the marriage if the husband has a certain blemish, then she should ask about these things and the husband should also declare. So, ideally, before getting married, both parties would declare any blemishes within them. But how about the case where they've already gotten married and they didn't declare, or one of them didn't ask about the blemishes that may be putting them off the marriage? What would happen in that case where the marriage has already taken place? So Imam Quduri is discussing this case here. He says, when the wife has a blemish, then the husband has no option to discontinue the marriage. He can't automatically say that I want to annul the marriage. Why? Because essentially, after the marriage contract has taken place, both the husband has certain rights and the wife has certain rights. Now, if we, for any particular reason, say that even though marriage contract has taken place, all the conditions have been found, marriage is binding, and because of a certain blemish that he doesn't like, he says, I want to annul the marriage, then of course that would be causing harm to the wife. She has certain rights that have become binding due to the marriage contract. For example, she wouldn't be receiving the due dowry to her. And so whatever she is due, he can automatically say that I want to annul the marriage because he feels like he doesn't really like something about her. And of course, this would be a means of causing harm to her. And that's why he doesn't have this automatic choice to annul the marriage. Someone might say, and how about the harm caused to the husband, where he didn't know about a certain blemish within her? The response to this is that it's not the end of the world. It's not like he can't do anything about it. If this blemish is so concerning to him, he may be able to get married to somebody else. And worst case, he can divorce her. But he can't just cause the marriage. He can't just say that the marriage is no longer there. He can't just end the marriage just like that. He can divorce her. Let's understand this with an example. You have Adam and Sarah. They've been married for a few years as non-Muslims. Later on, Sarah says, I'm a Muslim. And so, them being in a Muslim country where there is a judge, the judge offers Islam to Adam. If Adam says, yes, I accept Islam, then the marriage will remain intact. If Adam says, no, I don't accept Islam, then the judge will issue a separation between the two. Now, what is this separation? This separation, according to Imams Abu Hanifa and Muhammad, will be a divorce, and it's going to be an irrevocable divorce. And according to Imam Abu Yusuf, it will be a mere separation without any divorce. The preponderant view is the view of Imam Abu Hanifa and Muhammad, that is going to be an irrevocable divorce. What this means is that later on, Adam cannot say to Sarah that I'm revoking the divorce. It's irrevocable, which means that the only way he can get back with her is by going through the whole procedure, provided he accepts Islam, of course. He goes through the whole procedure of offer and acceptance and all the witnesses being present, and the whole marriage has to take place. But otherwise, he cannot just revoke the divorce. He cannot take her back. So this is the preponderant view. But Imam Abu Yusuf said that it's going to be a mere separation. The next one is very similar to this, where the husband accepts Islam and the wife doesn't. So he says, if the husband accepts Islam while married to a Magian woman, he offers Islam to her. Then, if she accepts Islam, she remains his wife. But if she refuses, the judge declares separation between the two, and the separation does not amount to divorce. Let's use the same examples as above. So you have Adam and Sarah again. Adam accepts Islam, and Sarah is Magian. She is not a Jewish woman or a Christian woman, because as we've learned earlier, if a Muslim man is married to a Jewish or Christian woman, that would be completely valid. There would be no problem with such a marriage. But here she is a Magian woman. So the husband will propose to her to accept Islam. If she accepts Islam, the marriage remains intact. But if she refuses, then the judge will declare a separation between the two. And in this case, the separation does not amount to divorce. Now, you may notice a difference between this ruling and the above ruling, where the husband is the one who accepts Islam and the wife doesn't accept Islam. We said above that this separation that the judge issues will be an irrevocable divorce. And now here, where she is the one who isn't accepting Islam, there is a mere separation without divorce. So why is there a difference between the two rulings? The reason for this is that a mere separation occurs when there is a fault on her part, the fault being here that she isn't accepting Islam. In the above, the judge is issuing a separation which amounts to an irrevocable divorce because it's a fault on the husband's part, and that's why there is a difference between the two rulings. And now coming back to this scenario where the husband has accepted Islam and she hasn't, Imam Quduri says, if the husband had consummated the marriage with her, she is entitled to the full dowry, but if he had not consummated the marriage, there is no dowry for her. So why is there the full dowry due when he has consummated the marriage? Because separation is such a thing which does not drop the obligation of the full dowry. So she will still receive the full dowry. And now coming back to the case where the husband has accepted Islam and the wife hasn't. So Imam Quduri says, if the husband had consummated the marriage with her, she is entitled to the full dowry. So let's say they've been married for a few years. Adam had consummated the marriage, of course. So Sarah will receive the full dowry. Why? Because separation, when the judge does issue a separation, separation is such a thing which does not drop the obligation of the full dowry. She will still receive the entire dowry. But if he had not consummated the marriage, there is no dowry for her. Let's say the situation was that they just got married and Adam decides to become a Muslim. And Sarah hasn't accepted Islam and she refuses to accept Islam. They haven't yet consummated the marriage. Then what is the ruling? She will not receive the dowry. When the judge issues the separation, there will be no dowry for her. Why? Because in this case, again, as we mentioned earlier, the fault is on her part. She is not accepting Islam, and it's not like the husband is at fault here. So she will not receive any dowry. Now moving on to the next one. Remember we said that the rulings we've just discussed, they are regarding when these spouses are living in a Muslim country where there is a judge. In the next one, it's discussing where they're not in a Muslim country, rather they are in enemy territory, so Darul Harb, which can also be translated as an abode of war. So Imam Quduri says, when a woman accepts Islam in enemy territory, her separation does not take place until she has menstruated 3 periods. When she has menstruated thrice, she becomes irrevocably divorced from her husband. Okay, so the first point to note here is Imam Quduri mentions enemy territory, Darul Harb. And that is a country, a non-Muslim country, which is at war with the Muslims. So Adam and Sarah say they are in a non-Muslim country and they are married. And Sarah is the one who accepts Islam in that country. So Imam Quduri is mentioning such a country that is at war with the Muslims. But the ruling isn't restricted to this scenario only. Rather, it is also relating to such a country, a non-Muslim country, which is not at war with the Muslims. It's not a Muslim country, but at the same time, it's not at war with the Muslims. In Arabic, there is a term that's used for that. It's known as Darul Aman, an abode which is at peace and there is no war between the Muslims and non-Muslims in that country. So even in that case, this ruling applies. So now Sarah has accepted Islam in a non-Muslim country where there is no judge. The judge would have, of course, asked the husband to accept Islam, but here there is no judge. So the ruling is that her separation does not take place until she menstruates 3 periods. Of course, that is for the menstruating woman. If she is such a woman who who does not menstruate, then the equivalent of that would be 3 months. And as you will learn in the chapters of Iddah, if Sarah was a woman who is pregnant, then her iddah, her equivalent of menstruation would be her giving birth. So as soon as she gives birth, her menstruation will be over. So Imam Quduri says that her separation does not take place until she menstruates 3 periods. So once the 3 periods or its equivalents have come to an end, that's when the separation begins. And then he says, when she has menstruated thrice, this separation will become an irrevocable divorce. She will be considered an irrevocably divorced woman. So Sarah, in this case, when her husband would have been given time during those 3 menstruation periods, he would have had time to accept Islam. He doesn't accept Islam, then what will happen after the ending of these 3 menstruation periods or its equivalents is that an irrevocable divorce will occur, which means that Adam can no longer go back to her, turn around and say to her that I'm taking you back. I am revoking these divorces. No, it's an irrevocable divorce. And again, the only way to get back with her is that they go through the whole procedure of marriage again, the offer, acceptance, and the witnesses present. And only then can he get back with her, provided that he accepts Islam. In the case where the husband has a certain blemish, and by the way, by blemish, we don't mean any old blemish. We mean certain blemishes which are maybe of real concern. And the examples given by Imam Quduri is insanity, leprosy, vitiligo. So these kind of blemishes. So likewise, the husband, when he has these blemishes, the wife has no option. She can't just choose to discontinue the marriage. And this is according to the views of Imam Abu Hanifa and Abu Yusuf. And this is the preponderant view. Imam Muhammad held that she does have the option. Why does he say this? Imam Muhammad says that she has an option, just like the ruling where we said that the man who hasn't got genitals, the woman later finds out after the marriage contract takes place, she realizes that he hasn't got genitals, he can't have intimate relations. And in that case, Imam Muhammad says that just like we say down there, she has an option to annul the marriage. Similar is the case here where she can annul the marriage. The response to Imam Muhammad here would be that there is a difference between these two cases. Yes, we agreed down there that in the case of a person who hasn't got genitals, yes, we all agreed that she will have the option to annul the marriage. But here, this is a case where there is a possibility of having treatment. For example, insanity, leprosy, vitiligo, the man can get treatment. In that case, there is no chance for a man to have treatment because he hasn't got any means. He hasn't got genitals. And that's why there is a difference. Down there, she has the option to annul the marriage. In this case, she doesn't have the option to annul the marriage. Now, again, for her as well, it's not like it's the end of the world. If something is so concerning for her, she can always ask for a divorce, go through the procedures of khula. And if that is not something he is ready to give a divorce for, then she can always approach the qadi, the judge, or approach the Sharia council, and they can go through the correct procedures to initiate the divorce. The summary of all this is that once the marriage contract has taken place, it's become binding. And so if later on one of them finds a blemish about the other, they can't just automatically choose to discontinue the marriage. Why? Because the marriage has taken place. If they feel so concerned about a certain blemish, they'll have to go through the procedures of initiating a divorce, going to the Sharia council, etc. Now, in the next one, Imam Quduri mentions the ruling of another blemish that can be found in a husband. He says, when the husband is impotent, the judge issues him a deadline of a year. Then, if he gains potency within this period, within the year, she has no option of discontinuing the marriage. Otherwise, the judge is to declare separation between them if the wife demands that. So this is a case where the husband is impotent. Not that he hasn't got genitals, no, he's got all that. But for some reason, he's unable to have intimate relations with his wife. So what the judge will do, or the Sharia council will do, is they will give him a deadline for a year. And within that year, he will have the option to seek treatment and find a solution to this problem. If at least once within that year he can perform and have intimate relations with her, then that's okay. She will no longer have the option to discontinue the marriage. But if she is waiting for a whole year, he can't find a treatment, he is unable to even once have intimate relations with her within that year, then the judge will issue a separation between them. And what will that separation be? That separation, Imam Quduri says, it will be an irrevocable divorce. An irrevocable divorce is essentially something where the husband can no longer revoke that divorce. It's finished, meaning that the only way, if he wants to get back with her, is by proposing to her again and going through the whole procedure of the offer and an acceptance and getting married with the condition of the witnesses, etc. But he can no longer retract or revoke this divorce. It's an irrevocable divorce. And further on, he says, she is entitled to the full dowry if the husband had been in seclusion with her. So, despite the fact that he is unable to perform, but because he has engaged in seclusion with her, then she will be entitled to the full dowry. Remember that seclusion can hold the same ruling as, um, remember that seclusion generally holds the same ruling as that of consummation of marriage. And so he has engaged in seclusion with her and she has presented herself to him. Now, she's not done anything, she's not fallen short on her side. It's him. So when he's had that seclusion with her, just like the ruling of consummation of marriage, he will be giving the full dowry. Similar in this case, she will receive the full dowry. So again, this is a case of an impotent man who has the means, the physical means to perform, but for some reason he is unable to perform and have intimate relations. In the next scenarios, we'll be discussing the rulings of a person who hasn't got genitals. What is their ruling? And a man who hasn't got, who is castrated, what is the ruling for him? So that's what we'll be discussing in the next ruling, inshallah. He says, if his genitals are amputated, the judge declares separation between the two immediately, and he does not allow the husband any time to disprove the amputation. So this is a person who hasn't got the means. He hasn't got a penis. He hasn't got the genitals. So there is no point in the judge giving him any deadline. So what he will do is declare the separation immediately. And the next one is about the castrated person. So he says the castrated husband will be given a deadline in the same way the impotent husband is given a deadline. So he's got genitals, but he hasn't got the testicles. So the reason for giving him a deadline is because there might be a slight chance that he is able to have intimate relations. And if so, then the judge, within that year, the deadline, if he is able to perform, then she will not have the option to discontinue the marriage. But if he cannot have intimate relations with her throughout that year she is waiting, then at the end of the year, just like the person who has no genitals, this castrated person, the judge will cause that separation between the two. Now we've covered so far a few rulings relating to blemishes found in either of the two spouses and what the other spouse can or cannot do when they come to know of these blemishes. In the next ruling, you'll notice that it's completely different. As we mentioned earlier, these are certain miscellaneous issues pertaining to marriage. Imam Quduri rahimahullah in the next one discusses the situation where the two spouses are non-Muslims and one of them accepts Islam. He says, when a woman accepts Islam and her husband remains a disbeliever, the judge offers him to embrace Islam. The judge offers him Islam. Then if he accepts Islam, she remains his wife. But if he refuses Islam, the judge declares separation between the two, and that is a final divorce, according to Imams Abu Hanifa and Muhammad, rahimahumullah. But Imam Abu Yusuf, rahimahullah, said that it is a separation without divorce. When a woman accepts Islam and her husband remains a disbeliever, the judge offers him Islam. Then, if he accepts Islam, she remains his wife. But if he refuses Islam, the judge declares separation between the two. And that is an irrevocable divorce according to Imams Abu Hanifa and Muhammad. But Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah said that it is a separation without divorce. And now to summarize, the first ruling we discussed was regarding a mukatabah, so a slave girl who has contracted to purchase her freedom. We said she is similar to a slave girl, a normal slave girl, when it comes to the master having married her off and she is later set free. Immediately she has then automatic right to annul the marriage. So we said that the mukatabah is similar to the normal slave girl in this regard. And in the case of a slave girl who has gotten married without her master's permission, she doesn't have this automatic right to annul the marriage if she is set free. We also discussed the ruling of a man who gets married to two women in a single contract. We said that that is valid, but if it happens that one of the women is unlawful for him, for example, she happens to be his own biological paternal aunt, and in that case, only that marriage with her will be invalid, void rather, and the other marriage, which happened in the same contract, will be valid. We said that when it comes to blemishes, then depending on, so if the wife has a blemish, for example, leprosy or insanity, then her husband has no option to automatically annul the marriage. When it comes to the husband having such a blemish, then the wife, according to the preponderant view, does not have an option to annul the marriage. Um, we also discussed the ruling of impotent husband and castrated husband. We said that if a husband is an impotent person or a castrated person, then they get a 1 year deadline to prove that they're able to have intimate relations. If they don't, if they're not able to, then the judge will cause a separation between them, and this will be an irrevocable divorce, in which case she will be entitled to the full dowry if he has had seclusion with her. We also mentioned the ruling of a man whose genitals are amputated. We said that he has no 1 year deadline, no deadline. There will be an immediate separation between them. We discussed the rulings of one of the spouses accepting Islam. We said that if the other spouse remains a disbeliever, then the marriage will become invalid. And depending on whether, if it's the woman who accepts Islam and the man remains a disbeliever, then it will be an irrevocable divorce. And we said that that is the preponderant view. And we said that if the husband accepts Islam, then the woman, if she remains a disbeliever, then a separation will be due, and that will not be amounting to a divorce.